Hi everyone, I'm Ann Carpenter from Global eTraining. You may have seen me up yesterday presenting the Education Award. I've worked with Global eTraining for a number of years now in a really strategic role with my accounts as an executive, and I've been lucky enough to work with Susan. Susan Brattberg is a Canberra BIM director. She has a lifetime of education experience, and I'd like Susan to, I'm going to interview Susan today, is really how we're going to present this information to you. So Susan, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit?
Hi everyone. I think it's nice to see a lot of new faces in the room. I've been involved with CanBIM for several years now. Ed mentioned I'm a director on the board, and certainly I've seen it grow. So it's fantastic to see a lot of faces and actually a lot of the international crowd coming. So thanks for coming to see what we're doing in Canada. We're doing a lot of really awesome things. So my background, actually, I don't know if many of you know this, it's actually a sociology background. So I studied organizational and group dynamics, and my specialization was in collaborative workplaces. So now it makes sense here that I'm in the BIM industry, and I've seen some really amazing things working with AEC firms from around the world to see what they're doing and how they're implementing BIM. So I am a founder of Global eTraining. Global eTraining started 7 years ago, and in just 7 years, we're working in 140 countries with thousands of AEC firms from around the world. We've sold over 1 million courses. So I know firsthand what a lot of companies are doing, and I'm excited to share some of their best practices with you today.
Thanks, Susan. So today we're going to have a conversation about how BIM makes the world go round, and we're going to try to share some takeaways with you all from some international BIM communities. Our goal is to provide you all with an opportunity to learn about the experiences of some of your international colleagues, hear about some innovative strategies, and hopefully you'll be able to walk away with some practical solutions you can apply in your own environments. So, Susan, the objectives of today's talk is to help people understand which BIM-related obstacles are persistent across the continents. It's to help people obtain practical strategies from some international colleagues, help you can gain insight into important things to consider when doing BIM business overseas, and it'll allow you to understand and apply novel approaches to BIM strategies. So, Susan, can you tell us a little bit about your experience with Global eTraining?
Absolutely. So I think many of you do know about Global eTraining. A lot of you are customers or partners of Global eTraining, but for those of you that don't know, a quick little recap for you. So we are an e-training platform. We make all sorts of technical training from Autodesk, design, BIM, technical space. We have a lot of pre-made content, and then we also help companies create their own company-specific workflows and process training. We do have an international distribution group, so we have over 70 partners representing Global eTraining around the world. We've sold over 1 million courses in 140 countries, and even though Global eTraining is relatively new, we've been around for the last 20 years, we are a division of a group called Brattberg Enterprises, which consists of Academy of Learning, Career and Business College, and Digital School, Technical Design College. And so we teach architecture and engineering technology programs, and that's actually been around for over 30 years. So just a quick little snapshot of some of the places that we are represented. You can see we're taking over the globe pretty quickly here. It's exciting.
So Susan and I have had the pleasure of meeting, collaborating, and partnering with BIM folks from all around the world. And today I thought I would ask Susan to share with us about some of the BIM conferences, some memorable experiences from some of the conferences you've been at.
When I look at that picture of me, the last slide, that's actually the BIM Show Live. Go back one. That's the BIM Show Live in London. That was about 4 years ago, and I was a co-keynote speaker with Lynn Allen from Autodesk, and that's me saying, is anything missing from this BIM execution plan? So we've come a long way, and basically everyone was talking about their BIM execution plans, talking about the collaboration and who all the various stakeholders were. Everyone was in agreement that that they thought of everything. And I said, what's missing? And what was missing was the training element. They actually hadn't even considered the training plan and how to get everybody on the same page before the project started. So what's really great is, several years later and a lot of networking and talking, we're actually recognized, a training partner is recognized as a key stakeholder in a lot of BIM projects. So that's one memorable one. Mm-hmm. Another one was actually really interesting. Yeah, we've been, I guess, Ann and I are BIM conference groupies. That's what we do. It's my job. I travel the world. I go to BIM conferences. Of course, I'm here at CanBIM. This is my favorite one, and I'm not just saying that because I'm at CanBIM. It's always dear to my heart to come and see what Canadian companies are doing. The one I was at most recently before this event was actually in Seoul, in South Korea. We were presenting on BIM, and it's just really amazing to see. Not long ago, they didn't even know what BIM was, and now we can see a whole country getting on board. So we had a room like this, and I did a presentation. I presented in English. It was translated into Korean for me. I was interviewed by the local press, and I have no idea what I was quoted on saying. I hope it's accurate. But really fascinating to see that BIM really is and truly is taking off on a global stage.
So as a result of our traveling, besides our healthy air mile accounts, we're really proud to be working with many AEC firms, governments, and education institutions of all sizes. We've listed some of our partners right here on the screen so you can look at it. And, we're really looking forward to having a lot more Canadian logos on this list. I think that's one of the things we want to communicate to you all today is where Canada has such an opportunity on the international field. And when I'm meeting with these folks, I've heard the same challenges echoed from organization to organization around the world. Thousands of companies are all sharing the same challenges, time and money. So everything on this list, time and money, the software continually updating, employee turnover, the fact that you have, the folks in this room, the thought leaders with this amazing vision and information in your minds, but you also have a job to do. You can't just be teaching all the time. And it resonates with everyone I talk to. And if your company isn't facing these challenges, please come and see me because we want to know your secret. So when I'm working with these organizations, this is the program we implement with them around the world. We really have achieved some exceptional results. So we start with the software essentials. People really do need to understand the picks and clicks. They need to know how to use the tools to enable them to become a BIM workplace. But we know that the tools are not BIM. Revit is not BIM. It's just a tool to get there. And so we work then introducing folks to professional skills, leadership, what is BIM, why should I care? We have courses around that. And then we start to partner with our tool. We have a special course authoring tool called the Generator, which allows any subject matter expert to create targeted workflows and capture your proprietary knowledge so that you can share it either with your team, with your whole organization, or internationally. And so this is the kind of impact that we have when we start to plan in a strategic partner role with our companies. So one of the things that came to mind when I was thinking about what I was going to talk about on this slide is I was fortunate enough to meet some really wonderful people from Arcadis over the last year. And Arcadis, when I first met with them, they said, yeah, we know we need training to do our BIM implementation, but that's a long ways away. They said our goal is to launch it in October of 2016. And we closed the deal October 2015. So due to the impact that we could make with our experiences, we shared what we knew worked best for other companies. We were able to help Arcadis increase their BIM adoption strategy by a full year. So Susan, why don't you tell us a little bit about some of the experiences that you've had with different companies and organizations and partners around the world using this 4-level approach?
Sure. So you can see here on this slide, it's just a list of many countries. So countries where where we've done business in a lot of countries that are leading in BIM, you can see there's a lot of countries where English is not necessarily the first language, so that's been a really challenging nut for us to crack. It's actually been about 5 years where we've been figuring out how to localize content. It's not just translation, but it's localizing it and localizing technical terms as well. So it's really exciting. So we've seen a lot of growth, beyond Canada, US, Australia, New Zealand, UK, of course, India, and Middle East are English speaking as their main big business language, but now we're seeing that other countries are getting on board, and we're able to support them as well because we have a multilingual platform. So you can see, too, some of the customers. So the customers, there's just a few names there. Each one of these names you can see is an international company, and they're actually following the 4-step BIM training process that Anne just mentioned in that pyramid. And it's fascinating to see that it doesn't matter if it's a small firm with 50-some employees or a global firm with thousands of employees. It really is the same challenges that they're facing and the same solutions that can truly work. Some of the novel approaches that our partners from around the world are doing, they're actually partnering with us to help localize the content, meet the local standards, and also be able to customize training content to meet company-specific, industry-specific, company-specific, and even job discipline-specific processes and standards. So the partner approach is really working for us.
You remind me, Susan, of how we are really taking the concept of BIM and moving it into education, the way that our platform is designed. So it allows for us to provide the technology, the companies to provide their goals, and for example, I work with Autodesk Consulting quite closely, so they can actually provide the expertise, and together we can deliver those customized solutions in our platform.
Yeah, absolutely. It is all about partnerships and collaboration and sharing best practices. And we certainly learned from the AEC industry. And when you're building all these amazing buildings and layouts, and we actually apply BIM to course building and course design as well, which is really cool. And I've never actually found a training company that builds courses in a BIM inspired fashion.
Definitely. Susan, what sort of timelines and challenges have you seen with BIM adoption around the world?
Well, I hope you're familiar with the technology adoption curve. It is standard for any sort of technology adoption, whether it's a new software or a new training program, or even if you're looking at BIM on a global scope. It really and truly follows this bell curve. So if you look at BIM on a global scale, I don't know, we might all have a different rating of where we're at. We've certainly passed the innovator phase. I'd say we're probably in the early adopter, maybe even getting in the early majority phase of BIM, and that's why we're seeing it accelerate at such a fast pace right now. So all of you here in this room, certainly in Canada and even on a global stage, if you're here right now, you can look at yourself as being an innovator and early adopter of BIM, and I think it's our job to help, to spread the word. And that's really what we see, too, when we roll out training or roll out BIM in a corporate setting. I was just talking to Brent with IBI earlier on how anything, whether it's a new software or their e-training program, we follow the same stage, so the innovators and the early adopters. And we really need to identify those people as our champions and ambassadors to help drive the new initiatives on a corporate or company or global scale.
So, Susan, what countries would you say are leading the way?
Well, it's not just me, although I think we can all agree. If you talk to, go to Europe and you talk about BIM, Scandinavia has been doing this for a very long time. So Norway is number 1 on this BIM integration index. And I could classify that. I would actually classify Scandinavia. They've been doing this a long time. Singapore is listed as number 2. And that's really interesting. They've moved very quickly. You think about Singapore actually mandated BIM, and they leapfrogged ahead of a lot of the rest of the world in a very, very short amount of time, which shows what you can do when you're all on the same page. And then number 3 and 4 is the UK and Scotland, and this is actually a report. Scottish Futures Trust did this report. What is interesting to me is Canada's not even listed. So my main point is let's get ourselves on the map.
So tell us a little bit more about how UK and Scotland became some thought leaders in the industry.
Yeah, for sure. So if you want to flip the next
bet.
slide.
There you go.
There we go. So the UK, I'm sure you're all aware, it's actually come up in several presentations over the last couple of days. The UK mandated BIM, and we're seeing a lot of events and a lot of forums. They talk about the UK BIM mandate. So when I go to conferences in Australia or if I'm in Europe, everybody's talking about the UK, and here we are here in Canada, and we're still talking about the UK. So it is a testament to the work done in the UK. They're doing a lot to drive awareness and drive adoption. And I do think that that's driving BIM on a global scale. And we're starting to see the rest of Europe really pay attention. And it's pretty interesting. It feels like when we go to Europe now, my colleagues just got back a couple of weeks ago on a round Europe trip. And countries in Europe have all mandated or recommended BIM. So we've seen very recently Russia just mandated BIM. France just mandated BIM, so a lot of other European countries are following suit.
So what happens when BIM becomes mandated? How does that impact things?
Well, often countries, with an official BIM mandate have achieved a sufficient level of credibility to advance in their industry. A huge step towards achieving credibility is also to improve standardization. A government mandate or support, and support from government, and I should even bring owners into this, enables better BIM adoption, and we've certainly seen that with countries that have taken that proactive approach. So higher BIM adoption in a country or company correlates to a development of accepted BIM standards. And we can see, like I said about the UK, a lot of countries have been watching to see what happens there to be able to apply that to their own countries. A funny story is actually in Germany. So we thought, okay, great, there's all this BIM stuff happening in Europe. We'll see if Germany's ready. And this was 3 years ago. They said, no, we're going to wait and see what happens. Call us in exactly 3 years. And I thought, well, maybe they're ready now. So I called them the next year, 1 year later, and they said, nope, don't call us. We're not ready. Germany's not doing BIM for 2 more years. And then I thought, should I wait more a year, or should I check it and see where they're at? And they said, don't call us. We told you 3 years. And of course, the German, very efficient. And then at the 3-year mark, they called me and said, hey, why didn't you call us yet? We're doing BIM. So, yeah, and they're right on track. And again, we can see that they're just diving right in.
Thanks, Susan. And what can you tell us as far as some best practices that you've seen come out of some successful BIM implementations?
Yeah, it's interesting. So I think what we're seeing here is identifying the stakeholders in a BIM execution plan, and it's been really great to see that often us as a training partner, I really believe that training is step one and the foundation of a BIM program. You have, you identify all the stakeholders, you identify the tools you're going to use, you come up with your BIM execution plan, and you really do need to have a way to train people on how to do it and what tools you're using and how you're going to be communicating. And it is really fascinating to see that when people on a project team are trained, the project actually runs more efficiently. So that is pretty cool to see, and that we're actually tracking it and helping companies achieve and recognize our ROI, return on investment. It's interesting too that when the time is taken up front on a country level, a company level, and a project level, including all the stakeholders, all the way the supply chain, from the owners all the way down to the subtrades, when they're all in agreement up front and have a clear way of communicating and collaborating, and again, training comes into this, then we're seeing that those are the most efficient projects. And then another thing that we're seeing that is, it's not just about using the tool that you happen to know or happen to have installed. It's about using the right tool for the project. And we're starting to see it's not, we're going to use AutoCAD because I learned AutoCAD in school and that's the tool I'll use for the rest of my life. People now are understanding it is, what is the right tool for this job? And people, I think companies are understanding this culture of learning. So it's not about knowing something and using it forever. It's about knowing how to learn very quickly and learn what's relevant for each project.
So if you had to say kind of what best practices would be, what would you say some of the best practices around the world would be?
Well, I think it's what we're doing here. We call it beer working. It's all about BIM, beer, and Twitter. So it's sharing best practices. And we talked about the UK, what they're doing. And, there's certainly, if you look at Twitter, a lot of the tweets are coming from the UK. I've talked to a few people, and, maybe it's all smoke and mirrors. I don't know. But they're sure talking about it. They're sure building awareness. And here we are. We're talking about it. Every other presentation has been talking about what they're doing. So I think we can learn a lot from that. And we're doing so many great things here in Canada, and it's been amazing to see. But I think that we're sharing with each other. We need to start sharing with the rest of the world what we're doing. So BIM, beer, and Twitter. It's not just sitting behind a computer anymore. It's getting out and sharing your best practices. And certainly the companies that are sharing are being recognized as the thought leaders. They're the ones that are winning more projects. They're the ones that are attracting the top talent. And they're the ones that are looked at as in the industry as the thought leaders.
So I think what I hear you saying is that when it comes to BIM on the global stage, you need to bring it and sing it.
Yes, exactly. So here in Canada, we're so humble, and that's a very great Canadian trait, but we need to be not afraid to toot our own horns and tell the world what we're doing. So it's because we're doing some really amazing things here.
So on a final note, what would be, from your experiences, the best advice that you could give to CanBIM members who are looking to grow their BIM practice?
Yeah, so speak up, what we're doing, collaborate, go to the networking events, share your best practices, and we definitely want to get Canada on an international stage. I can truly speak for when I travel the world and I go to these BIM events, sometimes in the past, like I'm talking 5 years ago, I used to feel like I was coming back to the dark ages and go to all these events and you'd see the thought leaders in the world talking about BIM and you come to Canada and people would say, well, we'll wait and see if this is really going to take off. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness. And so we have come a very long way in about 5 years, and it's so nice to see. And now we need to start telling the rest of the world all these really cool things that we're doing. So learn from the rest of the world, see how we can leverage that here in Canada, not recreate the wheel, so we can kind of leapfrog, not take all the same stepped approaches that other countries have taken. So how can we leverage that? Make sure that we promote what we're doing, and then not be afraid to play on the international stage. So it's really interesting. There's actually very few companies that are looking beyond Canadian projects, but I encourage you to look at a global scale because now with BIM, it is a global economy. We're seeing companies from around the world compete on our projects. So if we don't wake up, they're going to be knocking on our door, but we need to make sure that they know, we can be getting those international projects too. And we certainly are. We saw in the awards last night that there's a lot of prestigious Canadian companies representing us abroad, winning international projects. And we can keep winning them and be competitive here in Canada and be competitive on the international stage. So everyone pick up your phones and send some tweets and tell the whole world what we're doing here in Canada.
Yeah, thank you, Susan. And we want to congratulate everyone for taking the time to be here and being part of this BIM community, because that really is an example of some of these best practices we're seeing around the world, is this sharing of knowledge. And thanks to CanBIM for hosting this event. And Susan, as Susan says, it's all about beer, BIM, and Twitter. So tell each other, tell the world what you're doing. Thanks, Susan, for sharing with us your experiences. Thank you to everyone for listening today. Please do come by and visit us at the booth. We are doing a draw for some free eTraining, and we'd love to talk with you some more about how we can collaborate with you to create so you can learn it better, faster, and retain more. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.